In this video, we're going to spend some time and look at the structure of a muscle cell. And of course, we're very familiar with the generalized animal cell, right? With our nucleus and our mitochondria and our smooth endoplasmic reticulum and, all the organelles. Well, this is a cell. So over here is the muscle cell, and it is a cell, and it does have many familiar organelles. Sometimes these organelles take on a slightly different shape and a different name and a different function. So when we're looking at a muscle cell, also known as a myocyte, we're going to see that, instead of calling the plasma membrane, we're going to call it the sarcolemma, because this could also be called the plasma lemma, the outside membrane. So you're going to see the prefix sarco show up quite a bit. It shows up everywhere. So that gives you a hint you're looking at a muscle cell. So we have the sarcolemma, which is the outer membrane. Inside, we have cytoplasm, and we're going to call it the sarcoplasm. So that's the sarcoplasm within there. Then, really packed in muscle cells are these things called myofibrils. And you can see, in many ways, think about, you buy a package of dried spaghetti, right? And before you cook it, think about you're holding in your hand all those spaghetti fibers that are bundled together. That's kind of what the myofibrils look like. They're closely packed. They are long fibers. All right. Then we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That kind of sounds familiar. Sounds like endoplasmic reticulum, because it sort of is, but it has a slightly different function. And you can see here the sarcoplasmic reticulum. You can see it, this blue structure, how it's almost like a spider web, and how it surrounds a group of these myofibrils. So that's the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, because I'm doing muscle contraction, not surprisingly, I'm going to need a lot of mitochondria. So we see mitochondria in here. And you notice the nucleus, because this cell is so packed with these myofibrils, and which are surrounded by the sarcoplasmic reticulum, etc., and all the mitochondria in here, that the nucleus really tends to be pushed over to the side. Okay, so let's have a quick run through again of some of the stuff. So the sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of the cell. Sarcolemma is the plasma membrane. And the sarcoplasmic reticulum, yes, it is modified endoplasmic reticulum. And as I said, it forms that web-like structure surrounding those myofibrils. Now, some of this varies if I'm looking at a skeletal muscle through cardiac versus a smooth muscle, but we're really going to focus in on the basics of a skeletal muscle in this chapter. So what are myofibrils? Myofibrils are found in all three types, and they are really packed in there. Now, we're going to come back and talk about smooth muscle cells and how they arrange things slightly differently, how they arrange their myofibrils. But you can see here in a skeletal muscle cell that the myofibrils all run parallel to each other. As I said, it's kind of like long strands of dried spaghetti, if you want sort of a visual analogy of that. So let's roll along and talk about the structure and function of the skeletal muscle fibers. So here we're looking at a typical muscle fiber, and skeletal muscle fibers, or we already know this, a skeletal muscle has many fibers within it, and remember the endomysium, perimysium, etc. Well, that's also involved. But let's just look at one of the cells. And when we look at one of the cells, which we also call a fiber, they're very thin cylinders. They can be up to about 30 centimeters long. All right, and give you a comparison, there's a red blood cell, and here is a muscle cell, so quite a bit different. And we can see that in this case there are striations, and yes, you can definitely see this is one cell, but it's multinuclear. There are nuclei all over the place. Right? Okay, now when I look a bit deeper here, I can see the structure. So here are the myofibrils. You can see that the myofibrils are all jammed within here. And you can see that there seems to be some arrangement of structure that's occurring here, and we'll get into those in a bit. I just wanted to have a quick overview here. So, this is a muscle cell or a muscle fiber we're looking at. This is just one cell, and we're looking at the inside structure. And of course, because it's one muscle cell, and once again, if you need a reference, there's a whole muscle, there's a fascicle, and now we're just looking at one muscle fiber, which is what we're seeing right down here. Remember, every muscle fiber is surrounded by endomysium. And then the endomysium is on the outside, but below that we have the sarcolemma. Now, if we carefully look, we can see as we're coming along the sarcolemma that parts of the sarcolemma actually invaginate. They come deep into the cell, and they form these tubules that run into the cell. And these show up all over the place. There's another one, there's another one, there's another one. And these tubules are called transverse tubules. That's a transverse tubule, right? And for short, they're often called T-tubules. So T-tubules, transverse tubules, one and the same. Okay. Now, you notice that wherever you have a T-tubule, there's a whole bunch of T-tubules, we have some of this sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, as I look, the sarcoplasmic reticulum seems to be slightly enlarged right next to a T-tubule. And we call this specific area the terminal cisternae. So here is part of the sarcoplasmic reticulum over here. And you can see its web-like appearance. And you can see when it gets near a T-tubule that it's enlarged. And that's the area that we're going to call the terminal cisternae. We can also see mitochondria that are buried within here, and we can also see the nucleus. So I'm just going to end it there because I want to give just a little snapshot of the structure, and then we're going to come back and talk some more details about this in the next video.